Morning. I'm going to start in prayer.
Your name, Don?
My name is not Don. I'll get to that. I'll start in prayer first. So, dear God, thank you for bringing us here this morning. Thank you for all the lovely mothers that are here and the mothers that supported us throughout our lives, and most of them who had a deep involvement in our faith and help us to be cognizant of that and just know what it means to continue following you. In your name we pray. Amen. Now, I was listening to this radio show this morning, and this young man was talking. He said, I just remember my first influence of faith was my mother. She said, I saw her praying in church. I don't know the words she was using, but just watching her pray influenced him, how he could tell that there was something going on just watching her pray. So kind of interesting. So I'll give you the caveats first. I am the substitute teacher. I know that Don is watching that. Don writing no spitballs or anything, but this is on film, so we will be able to.
Does that mean we can do anything we want?
No, and there will be a film strip, which is often happens when it's. So that's one thing, but still, remember, this is being recorded, so you'll be prosecuted or persecuted either way to the highest extent of the law.
You may have to explain film strip to somebody younger.
Okay, other caveats. I'll be reading part of this. This is the whole presentation is predicated on this book. If you haven't read it, there's copies there. You can take one. Just take it for free. Also, I will be talking a little bit about this. This is a journal, a reflection journal. And there's a reflection journal for week 2 there. This is pretty daunting. I mean, it kind of made me think about Muslims, because there's 4 different prayer sections you're supposed to have. And think Muslims are called to pray 5 times a day. And if that's the kind of prayer they have, it'd be pretty daunting. I don't know. So it's interesting. I didn't finish it, so don't feel guilty if you don't finish it. I mean, some of it was, or I didn't experience it as much as I should have. Also, I have not finished this book either, so I'm putting that out there, because one of those books where it's like you read it and you just kind of have to think about it a little bit. I thought, do I want to race through it and read the whole thing, or do I want to really kind of commit it to, to my memory and just to kind of really feel it? And so I've only read about the first third. So what I'll read out of here will be just part of the first third. Okay? All right, anything else? Oh, also, my small group is doing The Chosen. We had finished the first 2 seasons of The Chosen. If any of you have seen The Chosen, there's only 2 seasons so far. They're filming the 3rd season. I highly recommend it. And The Chosen is about the life of Christ. And so their goal is to have 7 seasons of the life of Christ. I don't know how they put it out. I mean, they must have looked at the life of Christ and thought, okay, this is how it's going to be. They fit in 7 seasons. It's to me, it's very enlightening, and it really kind of brings the Bible alive. And a lot of times I'm like, that's not in the Bible. And I look at the Bible like, yeah, that's in the Bible, and that's kind of how it was. And it really kind of made me think a lot about the Bible, and just even the callings of the disciples. I'm like, and we'll have read about Matthew, the tax collector, and how he immediately just says yes to Jesus. Jesus walks by and calls him, and he says yes, and it's like, how did that happen? But The Chosen gives you some backstories that seem kind of plausible. I mean, obviously it's fiction, but still, it really brings it alive.
Just to let them know, it's thechosen.com. You can watch it for free on thechosen.com.
Yeah, Chosen, there you go. Okay. I think mine is on Angel Studios is another way to get it. Mine is on Angel Studios. Okay, so for those who did this last week, I guess the first question, let's see here. Opening prayer, done that, check. Okay, what was the best thing that happened this week? Okay, so for me, we had dinner with some people that we didn't know very well. So we had them at our house, and that was odd, although it was strange the first time you have somebody over that you don't really know very well. It's like, okay, should we serve alcohol? Should we not serve alcohol? Just there's a few things, and you're just kind of uncertain about the foods that you serve, but so it worked out good. It was actually a nice evening.
Yes, best thing happened to me this week is my cousin Diane came to visit. She comes to visit usually every year, but COVID got stopped that, so she's back this year. Very happy to have that.
Good. Welcome, Diane. We're happy to have you here too. Yes, Bill.
I guess the best thing that happened to us, our daughters are both home from college.
Oh, nice.
Very good.
Yeah, I'm wondering who these two young ladies.
So far, we're happy with it.
Fall will return.
Right. We're happy about that too.
Anything else? Okay, let's go on. So for people that follow along in the journal, anything that stood out in the journal besides what I just kind of said, I'm sure you felt the same way.
It's intense, it makes you really think, and
And-
it's more than just, fill it, 2 minutes, fill it out.
Right, right. There's some things that take long and contemplation and stuff.
I just realized how disjointed my days are, that the idea of being able to do something in the morning, noon, and evening, it's not my MO, I guess.
Right. I guess if you're a Muslim, the way the whole society is set up is that, okay, everything's gonna stop at these hours.
Right.
Kind of like if you're in
Yeah.
some countries where they take a siesta, you're shopping and all of a sudden, siesta time, you're like, well, everything's closed. So,
It was like our old blue laws.
right, right.
Oh, do we have to explain blue law to the?
No, in this room.
Well, there's some that, Rachel.
So one of the things, the thing that really caught me off guard or was interesting to me. So since this is my 1 week of teaching, you guys are gonna have to suffer through my stories. Okay, so the question was, how would it be if Jesus spent the evening with you? What would it be like? So I really kind of had to think about that, mull that over. And it's kind of, when I was a kid, a lot of you know that I'm one of 10, and I'm the second oldest of 10. And I was a pretty good student. My parents didn't have to worry about me too much. And it went down the line. One of my sisters is deaf, so a lot of their energy kind of went into her and stuff. So I was kind of like on autopilot a lot of my life. In a good way, though. I didn't kind of deviate too much. But on the bad side, I didn't really know my father very well. And he worked, and he was kind of had blue collar and worked a lot of different jobs. When I was a kid, but enough to support 10 kids. It's a lot of work. So when I was in college, and my father never went to college, didn't finish high school. He was going to come visit me for Dad's weekend, and I was like petrified because I'd never spent time with my dad. I just didn't even know what my dad liked or anything. It was really weird. Like, my dad's going to come down here, and the whole college experience is going to be, what it is. And so my dad walks in, and I just had no idea what I was going to do with my dad. And then my dad walks in, and he has a plate of brownies. Okay. So I had this extra heavy duty refrigerator, which was almost as big as this stand. So I had this big refrigerator. So my dad comes in and he opens the refrigerator. I'm gonna put Mom made these brownies for you. I'm gonna put them in the refrigerator. So he opens the refrigerator and it's so full of beer that he can't even put a plate of brownies in there. And my dad, not a drinker, like if he drank like a 6-pack a year, every once in a while on a hot day with his mowing the lawn, he's drinking. So it's like,
Those are my roommates.
yeah, they're right. Of course, I'm holding it for a friend, one of those kind of things. And he just sets the plate on the top of the refrigerator and said, I'll just leave it here. and that's all he said. He never said anything else. And he never told my mom, because I know my mom would have definitely chastised me. But it was like such a forgiveness there that, okay, you're here for the right reasons. I trust that you're here for the right reasons in college. And even if you had a thing full of beer, I know it must be your friend. Everything's going to go right. And it was this odd sense of forgiveness. And I said, Dad, what do you want to do? He goes, just do what you would normally do. And so I thought, okay, if Jesus was sit with me for evening, or the shows I would be watching, or the, work on the crossword puzzle, or that, whatever that stuff, or how I would treat my wife, would that be what Jesus would just want to just sit there and just kind of watch and just kind of, laugh at the same things I laughed at? So it was just kind of odd to think about that. And I had a great weekend with my dad. We went to the football game. We went to a Marx Brothers movie, which I liked old movies, and the Marx Brothers even before his time. But so he liked it, and we just had a great weekend, a very authentic weekend together. Okay, what was the hardest day of the past week?
getting through the weather.
Mhm.
That was the hardest for me.
Going to the doctor and getting a physical,
Sorry, Ann.
and then having them tell you stuff you don't wanna hear.
Always, right? Unusual.
Knowing what to do for a daughter who had a need, not knowing if I should step in, not knowing if I should just listen, not knowing exactly, how to parent at that point in life.
Until your husband stepped in.
Yeah, Chuck stepped in and he helped out.
Hey, I visited a friend in the hospital too, who, he just didn't know kind of what to say. It's hard when you go there, and he was a little bit confused anyway, and it was a little more difficult than I thought to visit a friend in the hospital. Okay, let's go on here. Okay, so we're gonna recap last week's story, the video that we saw last week, the film strip that we saw last week. So Eric Nelson collapses of a heart attack, and the pastor gets the news of the heart attack, and he goes to the hospital. And the family decides that after talking to the doctor that they're going to pull the plug. That he doesn't have brain activity, things aren't working well, so they have to pull the plug. And the pastor goes to the home afterwards to pay his respects, and he meets with family and friends. So then you learn through these meetings that Eric had a heart attack 5 years ago. That Eric moved from a fan to a follower, so you don't really know the whole backstory of that, but that Eric somehow had this change in his faith throughout that time. Eric's wife was forced to evaluate what life really means, and obviously that's a pretty common thing when we have a close person die. It's like, okay, well, how is this going to change my life? What does this mean for me personally, but also just kind of my faith life too. Eric's business associate says that there's a new job and that their relationship was strained. Bill, Eric's father, didn't like the new job, and also didn't like the people that Eric works with. And that was pretty obvious. And nearly Eric's friend from high school alludes to Eric's dark past and subsequent transformation. Okay? All right, so that's the setup, and the cliffhangers were ready to go. And we're gonna go with, I think this is probably there. Okay.
A few years ago, my wife bought this ivory-colored couch for our living room. It was kind of a dangerous gamble because we have these 4 kids running around the house, but they know the rules. I mean, they know they're not allowed on that couch or in that room. But one day, my wife was straightening up in that room and she discovered a long-kept secret. She flipped over one of the cushions and she found a stain. It wasn't just any stain, it was pink fingernail polish. We called our 3 daughters into that room, we lined them up and began questioning. I reached towards the couch to flip over the cushion and reveal the stain, but before I had a chance, my middle daughter, Morgan, she cracked. The guilt was too much. She started crying and she ran up the steps. I went after her and followed the sobs. I found her in the corner of a closet with her head between her knees. I got down next to her and I put my hand on her back and tried to comfort her. After a few minutes, the 2 of us went downstairs and she told her mom and me what she had done. And it was a secret that she had kept for a while. She was scared to death that somebody was going to find out. After a few minutes, she looked up at us with those big brown tear-filled eyes, and she asked a question that just melted us. She asked, "Do you still love me?" My wife knelt down beside her, and she whispered in her ear, "Morgan, you could never make a stain so big that it would keep us from loving you." I wish I could tell you that the stain was no longer there. I wish I could tell you that that couch came clean, but the stain is still there. It's always going to be there. But a funny thing happened. Morgan has started to tell the story of the stained couch. When we have company, she brings them in and she'll show them the couch and the stain. See, I think for her, a stain which once represented guilt and shame and fear, I think now it represents unconditional love, it represents acceptance, it represents grace.
Sent today, 9:07 a.m.
Hey, Dad. Sorry to bother you, but Mom said to call and remind you to send the alimony check. She still hasn't gotten it. Sorry, this wasn't my idea. Maybe we could see each other soon. Love you.
Message deleted. Next message. Sent yesterday, 4:15 p.m.
Hi, Gary. It's Joyce. Yeah, you may not remember me. You left your phone here last week before you snuck out, jerk.
Message deleted. First saved message. Sent July 27th, 2007.
Yeah, is this Joyce? Yeah, I'd like my phone back, please. Yeah, well, there's something on it that I need. Then why did you call me? Great. Yeah, I'll be right over.
In Jesus' time, there was a man named Matthew who had long stopped trying to hide his stains. His family and friends had likely written him off. At the very least, he was a massive disappointment to his own parents. I'm sure they had much different plans for their son. We know this because Matthew had another name, Levi. And that name indicates his parents were expecting him to serve the Lord like the Levites of the Old Testament. From birth, he would have been set aside, destined to be a spiritual leader for the nation of Israel. Matthew's father, grandfather, and great-grandfather were all likely priests who had faithfully served the Lord. By age 12, Matthew would have had the first 5 books of the Bible memorized.
Ice on your own paper, Gary. Yes, Miss Winters.
It's probable that Matthew tried to become a disciple of one of the rabbis. But if he sent in his application, it must have been turned down. He didn't make the cut.
Eric. Eric, I need it. Come on. Wait. Now you.
Gary, Eric's a saint. Saint or not, I've donated I don't know how much money to this school, much more than him, and I want his son out of here. Nobody twisted your kid's arm, Bill. Eric's making his own choices.
Don't look so worried, Eric. Your dad's gonna get you out of this. I'm the one who's gonna get nailed to the wall.
It's unnecessary, and perhaps my money would be better spent somewhere else.
Come on, Eric.
Bill!
I'm sorry, Gary.
Now!
What's it gonna be, James?
I'm sorry. Gary needs to find a new school.
He couldn't measure up. Matthew had flunked out of rabbi school. Now, this didn't just mean he was working for the first century equivalent to the IRS. To be a tax collector in Matthew's day, it meant that you were not only taking money from your own people, but that you were giving it to the despised, to the hated, occupying nation, the Romans.
Eric! Come on, man. Come on.
Why take such a job? Well, there was money to be made. The tax collectors would steal from their own people to line their own pockets. Matthew was a religious and social outcast. He was detested.
Who'd you tell your dad you're going?
I didn't. I just left.
Getting pretty bold, man.
I don't care what he says.
Moving around back there.
Is that your dad's?
Who else? Stealing from my own parents. Guess you could say stooping pretty low, huh?
Yeah. But it's not beneath me.
Wow.
My father deprived you of some fine Christian schooling. I think you're entitled to some compensation.
Like I said, man, getting pretty bold.
And you and me, we have a lot in common with Matthew. Because we don't measure up. We don't make the cut. The Bible says in Romans that all of us have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. In other words, none of us are good enough. We've all said things we wish we wouldn't have said. We've all done things we shouldn't have done. And so we scrub and scrub at the stain, but the stain just won't come out. One day, he is sitting at his tax collector booth on a busy street. I'm sure there were many things he wishes he could do over, but it was too late now. His stains would never come out. reached this point where we're not sure what to do. And so we live in denial of the stain, or we blame other people for the stain, or we rationalize and justify the stain.
Easy ride.
Or we just live in guilt and fear, hoping somehow no one will notice. But Matthew had reached a point where he was no longer even trying to hide his stain. His friends were prostitutes, thieves, and drunkards. His faults were open for all to see.
We've got to stop doing this.
Yeah, that's what you always say.
By now, Matthew would have been well aware of Jesus and his teachings. He would have known that Jesus wasn't your typical rabbi, but that he was doing things differently. Then one day, Jesus comes by the tax collector's booth of Matthew, and he offers a 2-word invitation. He says, "Follow me." Now, those who overheard the invitation would have been shocked. I'm sure that the other disciples were probably offended because Matthew was a tax collector. He wasn't just a sinner. He sinned for a living. He was a tax collector. And yet Jesus says, "Follow me." The question is, would Matthew do it? And Matthew understood that to follow a rabbi was a 24-hour-a-day commitment. Matthew understood that it was not just knowing what Jesus knows, it was going to be living how Jesus lived. Matthew understood that in order to follow Jesus, he must call Jesus Lord. The word Lord in the New Testament is interesting because most of the time when we hear it, we assume it is a reference to the divinity of Jesus. But in actuality, the Greek word Lord is the word kurios. Now here's what's interesting about this word. It is without question a slavery word. It belongs to the world of slavery. A kurios was the owner of the slave. And so when Matthew calls Jesus Lord, it's not so much an acknowledgement of his sovereignty or of his heavenly residence. It is saying that Jesus is his owner. Now, there's no way to call someone a kurios without calling yourself a doulos. Doulos is the Greek word for slave. A slave had no rights. A slave signed over everything to the master, even his own identity. A slave's one-word job description was obey. So Matthew understood to call Jesus Lord was to call himself a slave. Many fear that being a slave to Jesus means forfeiting your freedom, but in reality, it's only when we make him our master that we truly experience freedom.
Did it pass?
What are we doing in here? Anna's gonna kill me.
Why? You were just a disorderly passenger. I'm the one who's gonna get nailed to the wall.
I'm gonna miss church tomorrow. What? Anna and I have been going...
Oh, yeah, Anna. She wants to change you. But I know you better than that. Church ain't gonna change you. We went to church when we were kids and we're doing the same thing.
Yeah, Gary, exactly. We did the same thing when we were kids and now we're 42 years old.
What's the matter with you?
I don't know. Been getting these chest pains.
Eric Nelson, your wife made your bail. You're free to go.
Well, if she doesn't kill you or turn you into some kind of religious nut, I'll see you later. Come on, Eric, lighten up. Look, I love Jesus just as much as the next guy, but just because I don't go to church...
The next guy's in a jail cell.
Yeah, Eric. Well, you are the next guy, so don't get all high and mighty with me.
Why do you have to insult my wife? Has it ever occurred to you that some people might actually take their beliefs seriously?
Yeah, Eric. Well, people like your dad,
I meet people every week who were slaves to something, but they found freedom when they became a slave to Jesus Christ. They were slaves to possessions or slaves to their own pleasures. They were slaves to people, what other people thought of them. But they discovered that true freedom is only found when they live as a slave to Jesus Christ. Instead of shame and bondage and death, we find joy and grace and eternal life. You will never know true freedom until you have completely surrendered and become a slave to Jesus Christ.
She wants a divorce. What happened?
I don't know. I woke up to go to work this morning. The kids were gone, and I found that.
It's all right, Eric. Just calm down.
Don't tell me to calm down. It's not all right.
Eric, listen to me. I've been... Eric.
Breathe.
Eric. All right. All right. What's going on?
I can't breathe. Oh, God, not
right.
now, please.
Hold on. Hold on. It's all right.
If being a slave to sin has left you broken and bruised, and you find your life in pieces, my master loves you, and if you let him, he will take the pieces of your life and turn them into a beautiful mosaic. My master invites all who are weary and heavy burdened to come to him and find rest for your souls, because his yoke is easy and his burden is light. And when you become a slave to my master, he makes you a son, he makes you a daughter, he calls you a friend.
Mr. Nelson, we've confirmed that you've had a very serious heart attack. We still need a few more tests to be sure, but the results from the electrocardiogram indicate to me that the cause of your attack was hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It's a condition in which
Matthew finds himself at a tax collector's booth. All day long, his own people remind him of what a failure and what a disappointment he is.
Why? What did I do?
And then a rabbi stops in front of the
In
booth.
some cases, this condition is caused by a virus.
Perhaps Matthew assumes that this rabbi will point a finger and tell everyone who will listen about his stains and of what a disgrace this tax collector is to God. Instead, Jesus says, "Follow me."
The important thing to know is that this could very well happen again. I'd like to discuss a surgery, but I can't stress enough the importance of lifestyle changes. But we'll talk more after the tests are conclusive and after you've had a chance to rest.
Thank you, Doctor. Look, Eric. Advice is cheap. But Anna is stressing you out. You talk about lifestyle change, start there.
What if I had died, Gary?
You didn't.
I will one day. What would I have left behind? What if God's trying to tell me something?
Like what? Get more exercise?
I gotta stop doing this.
That's what you always say.
And what would Matthew do? Here's what we read. Matthew got up and followed him.
I need you to leave.
When Jesus said to Matthew, "Follow me," He was making it clear that his invitation to follow is not just for the religious elite or for the morally upright, for those who have their lives together. His invitation is for all of us who are hiding some stains. Jesus said, anyone who would come after me must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. Anyone. Anyone is a pretty inclusive word. Anyone can follow Jesus. Anyone who's ever thought to themselves, I've gone too far, my stain is too big. Anyone who's ever laid awake at night and said, I can't believe what I've done. Anyone who's ever looked in the mirror and said to themselves, I can't believe what I've become. Anyone can follow. Anyone who knows down deep that they've got really nothing to offer Jesus. Really, it's what Jesus offers us that changes things. On the day he said to Matthew, follow me, something changed in him that day. And how do we know all this about Matthew's life? I mean, how do we know about his past failures and mistakes? It's because he tells us. I mean, he invites us into the living room, he shows us the stains on the couch, and he tells us a story of love and grace. And these days, when people speak of Matthew, they don't think of him as some tax collector who sold his soul to the Roman government for a paycheck. No, we remember Matthew as one of the 12 disciples. We remember him as a follower of Jesus Christ.
Please.
But just because Matthew left his past behind and started following Jesus doesn't mean he was perfect. Far from it. Even after we decide to follow Jesus, we continue to need his grace for the journey. But here's the thing, his grace doesn't just invite us to follow, it teaches us to follow.
First, saved message, sent July 27th, 2007.
Gary, it's me. Eric. We haven't talked since that day. I've had a lot of time to think. 3 years. I guess I'm one of those nuts who doesn't take it all seriously now. You were right, what you said in jail. Church can't change people. Anna can't change me. But God can change anyone. I know that's a heavy thing to drop to you on a voicemail, but maybe we could talk about that in person. I hope you'll call me back so we can. And so I can ask for your forgiveness. Because I wasn't always the best friend to you. And I'm sorry. Give me a call. Bye.
Message saved.
And we find ourselves at the same crossroads as Matthew. You're guilty. You know what you deserve. You know what you have coming. But the words of Jesus are words full of grace. He says, follow me. You think there must be a mistake, and doesn't he know who I am? Doesn't he know what I've done? What about my stains?
Sorry to bother you.
Yeah, no problem, Gary.
I really need to talk to someone. Is this a bad time?
You're fine. If you want, you can just have a seat on the couch.
Thanks.
Okay.
I guess the first thing
Jesus knows your stains. In fact, he died on the cross so that all our stains could be washed clean. So how much longer will you live with these regrets? How much longer will you say, maybe tomorrow? When will you let God's grace replace your guilt? When will you accept a fresh start and a second chance? When will you respond to the simple, gracious words of Jesus? Follow me.
Okay. Any thoughts about that, the video?
I just had a question. I thought Gary was, in the first video, I thought he was the dad, but
That's
he's
Bill.
actually the friend.
Yeah, friend, yeah.
Yeah, I thought he was the
You did
dad.
too?
Yeah.
Bill is the dad.
Yeah, Bill's name.
Bill?
Bill, right, the kind of bald guy who's
Okay, so
sitting
a
there
different guy was the
Kenny, who's sitting there
dad, sitting at that
in the
desk.
office, right,
Director of
right.
Financial.
Okay.
Oh, so I was, that's the guy I
I
thought.
was with you. I thought it was the father too. So
I'm like, I'm confused.
they all look alike.
They do. Okay, thank you.
I mean, I didn't know the whole Lord thing either, about slavery and Lord, because I mean, so many places the Bible says, you know, I'm a slave, and Paul says many times, I'm a slave to Jesus Christ, you know, and so that kind of enlightens it a little bit, you know, what also just what the word Lord means too. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I think the whole idea of owner-slave is just so detestable in our society that it's hard to understand, you know, the Greek for that, and that was a perfectly normal part of their society, and yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I just want to wash it away. I don't want to hear that, you know.
Right. Does somebody have Luke, and somebody read Luke 5, 1 to 10?
Luke 5, 1 to 10. Jesus calls his first disciples. One day, as Jesus was standing by the lake of Gennesaret, the people were crowding around him and listening to the word of God. He saw at the water's edge 2 boats left there by the fishermen who were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, and asked him to put out a little from shore. Then he sat down and taught the people from the boat. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into deep water and let down the nets for a catch." Simon answered, "Master, we've worked hard all night and haven't caught anything. But because you say so, I will let down the nets." When they had done so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both boats so full that they began to sink. When Simon Peter saw this, he fell at Jesus' knees and said, "Go away from me, Lord, I am a sinful man." For he and all his companions were astonished at the catch of fish they had taken. And so were James and John, the sons of Zebedee, Simon's partners. Then Jesus said to Simon, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you will fish for people."
So here's an example of Simon Peter feeling disqualified. And he just knows the first thing he says, "I'm not worthy." And that, you know, when you don't know who I am, you don't know what I've done. And Jesus just said, you know, whatever it is, you know, it's okay. And it's a good example of feeling disqualified. And, you know, and who knows what Simon has done, and all of us have stains in our lives, and that Jesus forgives like that.
The video makes it clear that Gary's got a lot of baggage.
Right. Oh, yeah, definitely. Can somebody take Luke 9:23?
Then he said to them all, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily. Follow me."
So we're all kind of familiar with that verse. That was a verse that was in this week's reading. And to me, reading it, kind of mulling on that, the word daily just really stuck out. And so, I mean, no matter what stain you have, and I mean, I love the pink on the couch is kind of an interesting stain that they have. But it's daily, and so And we get a do-over every day. You know, we can confess, or if we're sorry, and Jesus is there for us. But you know, you have that chance every day, and I think that's helpful to me to know. Okay, I screwed up yesterday, but take up my cross every day.
That's interesting, Terry, that you take the daily from a very positive standpoint, as opposed to, I think, certainly and I think many take it from the more, this is something you got to do every day. You're carrying that cross every day. So I like that, your perspective on it, just as opposed to it's the burden is every day.
Right, burden, right. If you skip a day, you're disqualified.
Right.
Yeah. Sure, you guys have all heard that verse before too. So. Okay, turn it off. Okay. So another thing interesting. We haven't gotten to this yet. All right, let's go. Oh, okay. So, what do you think that Gary's first question to Kyle would be, and what would Kyle's answer be?
If I sunk too low, that God can't forgive me. And Kyle's answer, of course, would be, no way.
Right. And you don't really know the time, but it seemed interesting to me that he kept Eric's message. And that was the oldest message he had. And you just wonder how long, because his wife said in the other thing that he had a heart attack 5 years ago. And he said it was 3 years. So you just wonder how long that message has been sitting there. So I know in like a lot of the literature it says there's, gosh, I don't remember, like 7 times you have to be presented with the gospel before you accept it. And probably Eric, when he was a kid, you know, he was presented with it many times. And I mean, Kyle, Gary. And Gary, right. And but as a kid, are you ready to accept it? I mean, you have to have a certain level to kind of understand what it means. But and he probably listened to that message many times, you know, knowing what that meant for him.
Or he skipped it many times,
right.
Knowing what it was going to say.
Right. But he didn't delete it. That's the odd part, you know. So here's this huge stain that's on blinking 111 every day when he looks at his phone, and it's like, that's just
It's calling.
He's calling, right? He's calling. It's kind of like the pink stain on the couch. Every time you look at the couch, and it's you just remember it. You know, and that's an interesting thing to think about too.
I think the fact that he's holding on to that message, clearly he's looking for something, hoping for something. You know, is there something that could happen in my life that obviously happened in Eric's life? I think there's a hopefulness there, even though probably didn't understand what that might be for several years.
Well, I mean, it seemed pretty clear from the message to me too that he knew what that meeting was going to be about.
Yeah.
You know, so that he you know, that's probably why he put it off for such a long time. Just because he knew he'd have to face up to himself and to this person who knew him deeply. I mean, he had a friend who had known him for many, many years, and just knew a lot of his stains and a lot of the bad things he had done, but still was willing to reach out to him.
See, I don't think it was super clear, like what, if he knew what he had to do or what. Because there's the reference too of, oh, your dad. Like, I think there's a lot of negative feelings he had associated with religion and Eric's dad. You know, what did that mean? You know, and so, you know, to me it wasn't clear why he, you know, obviously he drank and some other things, but I just think there's a lot of levels to maybe why he wasn't following another path.
Right. I mean, I think too, a lot of times you see people who profess to be Christians who act in a non-Christian way. And so it's like, do I really want that? And is that what really being a Christian is? And just the hypocritical nature of
I saw his dad was hypocritical, it seemed.
Right.
He wasn't doing well in school, so that was,
Right, his dad in the principal's office said, I give lots of money to this school. So obviously he had some, you know, connection there with the school. money-wise.
And last week was set up for that, so when we get to the dad being the kind of key focus here, we see that his focus is money.
Right.
Because he was talking about Eric's job and going through the financials and all of that kind of thing, so, I mean, I don't know if that's next time or a couple weeks from now, but.
I remember I had a conversation with this man who was 95 years old, probably the richest man I ever knew. And he had just made a lot of money in construction. And I was asking him about heaven. And he wasn't sick or anything, but I just talked to him about heaven. And I said, what do you think about heaven? He goes, I don't believe in heaven. And this is a man who had given literally millions of dollars to the church. Literally millions of dollars to the church. And I'm thinking, here's this person that has given so much money to the church and goes to church literally every day, Catholic, goes to church every day, and they give him millions of dollars. It's like, why don't you believe in heaven? And he said, because now we have all these satellites and stuff, and they're seeing deep into space, and no one's ever seen heaven. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is the faith that you have, that heaven is a place that some satellite is going to be able to see. And it made me so sad, but also the faith was in the millions of dollars he had given and the shrines that he had placed in these different churches where he had attended. And but still, it wasn't what it's really like, what the kingdom of heaven is. So.
Was anybody surprised by the influence the girls had on those teenage boys?
Do you want to confess yourself?
It reminded me of Eve.
You remember that far back, Chuck?
Was he someone you knew in high school? So there's probably a lot of questions Gary had. It took a lot of guts for him to come to Kyle's office. Probably.
Another thing, Gary, that as we get older, those of us who are older, and you have people that are close to you die, friends even, right? People that were your peers. You start to come to grips with your own mortality, right? And I think you look at this Gary guy, and he seems like somebody who's been in denial about his own mortality for a long time, right? And so maybe he's finally realizing that, and my friend Eric's gone. Didn't really see that coming.
Right.
And so that can make some people think differently. Sometimes.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Not always.
Yeah. A lot of us come to Christ when we're in the midst of a tragedy, something we can't control.
I'm thinking when Gary asked Kyle a question, that Kyle may have said, well, Gary, what do you think? He may not have had a quick answer. He may have made Gary think.
It seems like Gary's been thinking for a while on this stuff. Okay, so we're gonna.
Wasn't deep enough.
Going deeper here. Okay, so we have three choices here, and I made the executive decision. I think all three of these say virtually the same thing. They're virtually the same thing. So who has Luke 5:27-32?
I do. Okay, so Jesus calls Levi and eats with sinners. After this, Jesus went out and saw a tax collector by the name of Levi, sitting at his tax booth. "Follow me," Jesus said to him, and Levi got up, left everything, and followed him. Then Levi held a great banquet for Jesus at his house, and a large crowd of tax collectors and others were eating with them. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law who belonged to their sect complained to his disciples, "Why do you eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners?" Jesus answered them, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance.
I think it's interesting here that that they're sinners. And it's like, what's the draw to Jesus? And I mean, these are just friends of Matthew, but they're all sinners. And so you wonder if this is like his first salvo to these people, Jesus' first salvo to these people. Because previous to all three of these verses, I mean, Jesus had done lots and lots of healings and had already been, preaching throughout Galilee and stuff. So they definitely would have known who Jesus was by this point, because thousands of people have been already healed. So I just can't imagine what that would be like with all these sinners and Jesus hanging out with them. But also another thing is that in the Matthew section, he talks about who the disciples were, and he says Matthew the tax collector. The other ones are Simon, Andrew, John, and John.
Would you like me to read it?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Matthew, Levi, the tax collector, writes.
Right.
Jesus called his 12 disciples to him and gave them authority to drive out, these are the names of the 12 apostles. First, Simon, who was called Peter, and his brother Andrew, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew, the tax collector, James, son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him.
So here in that passage, that's the Matthew passage. Okay, so Matthew's the one that's writing this, but he mentioned that Matthew is the tax collector.
Yep.
So it's almost like he's putting his sin out there. He didn't say what anybody else was. He doesn't say this guy was a fisherman, what all these other people, but it says Matthew, the tax collector. So it's like, how much of a stain did he have on him that he had to kind of remind people that it was the tax collector that was there?
It's almost like the story that Kyle told here of his daughter,
right,
who comes in and says, "Look at this stain," and it shows how much my parents love me. Same thing here.
Right.
Look at my stain. This is how much Jesus loved me, that I became one of his disciples.
Yeah.
I mean, and fortunately, his daughter in the Kyle part came to the realization that, the stain is okay. The stain is okay, and there's forgiveness there, and that we need to all come to that. To be a true follower, I mean, we have to realize that, we all have stains, and we all have some pretty obvious stains, in our hearts. I mean, it's not obvious, it may not be obvious, to look at us, but we all have stains, and that be a follower or forgiven of those stains. Okay.
Is there something equivalent that Matthew was in American society? I mean, he was a tax collector for the Romans, so it's against, his own people. But is there anything that would be comparable today?
In terms of the specific role, I don't know. In terms of people that we would despise to the same level, I'm sure there are.
Crooked politicians.
But also crooked and pedophilic clergy.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think of something like that, and even in the Bible it says, woe to them, and they should have a millstone around their neck and in there. So probably those are spicy because they're serving their congregation, they're serving God allegedly, and then they have this stain that's society is
It's obvious.
Right, it's obvious. So. It's obvious to everybody.
But those stains don't come out later.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, everyone knew that Matthew was a tax collector.
Right.
But not everybody knew about the priest who was not doing what he should.
How about the drug dealers?
Drug dealers, yeah.
Right.
Drug dealers are profiting off of the people that they end up.
How many, I mean, there's so many young people that take drugs that will try it. Cannabis is, go buy a pack,
Yeah.
But it used to be called weed and all this other stuff. Now it's cannabis. I don't think drugs exactly.
Well, it's not just doing drugs. It's the guys who are running the drug empires,
Right.
Yeah.
and
The gangs.
and leading the gangs and all of that. I don't know. There's any
Gangbang.
exact equivalent of a Matthew, but that would be something that would be close.
Just great.
On a different, and I just find it so sad that he never took Eric up on his request to call him, that he never managed, that this is all after Eric's death, that he's finally hitting him. He's held that message for all those years, an open invitation from Eric, for Eric to tell him what he's found through Jesus. I just find it so sad that it's not until after Eric dies that Gary finally says, okay, it goes to Kyle to talk.
Well,
So he
maybe
missed
without that message, he would have never gone to Kyle.
Right.
So maybe without
Yeah.
that seed, he would never.
I just, it's just sort of sad that he never got the chance to reconnect with his friend, because you assume that over all those years, they never talked again.
Right.
What about in heaven, if he's going to God? That could be a different story.
Yeah.
And Sally, I bet you've sown seeds with so many people, and you may not know in your own lifetime that they came to Christ, but like you said, in heaven, great is your reward. So it is sad on earth, though. You're right.
I just think of how many things I haven't responded to.
Me too.
I have voicemails that I haven't responded to.
But and Wanda, you're right. I remember I taught Sunday school, and I think I was at DBS, and I was in third grade, and all these kids, and there's a lot of kids that aren't from our church, and so there's this one kid that wasn't from our church, but he was in DBS, and then fast forward 10 years, and he and my son are friends in high school, so we're invited to, and I don't know him very well, but we're invited to their house for his high school graduation party. And I went, and it was a cold day at his high school graduation party. Anyway, I went to his room, and I took my jacket off and put it on his bed, and on his dresser, the only picture on his dresser was that VBS class. And it was so odd that was the one picture, was the VBS class, and it was on his dresser. Yeah, so I was like, okay, well, maybe the seeds that were planted, the seeds you planted, all of us have planted with many people, just not even maybe words, but just by our actions.
I'm really appreciating this and enjoying it, but the youth are going to want us in service in 7 minutes.
Okay, so let's see, personal challenge, what did it take to wake up Gary? That obvious. Okay, what did it take to wake you up? My alarm clock this morning. Okay.
The impending 10:15 service.
Right, there we go. Okay, got it. Okay, so pick up your week 2 journal on your way out, and if you don't have a book, you can take a book. And I'll say a quick prayer. You can go. Dear God, thank you for waking us up all today. Help us to wake up to you every day, to know that it's a new day, and that you forgive us our sins and love us despite our stains. Help us to plant seeds in others and make them know that they are worthy of your love. Here we pray. Amen.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for coming.